6 things I want to cover about Sam Bankman-Fried and his crew and FTX and Alameda Research, which is the investment firm that's tied to them. Okay, they're linked together. So let's kind of roll through this here. First things first, okay? And now this is an outright scam. There's no longer any debate around FTX and Alameda Research and what they're doing and how they're scamming, okay? So it's more nuanced than this. There's more layers to this, but it's a very simplified version. And if you look at it right here, okay, so Alameda Ventures invests in a altcoin project. Now these guys call this something else, but it's an alternative project that has its own coin, okay? And so then Alameda Research receives that pre-mined token amount, okay? So if you're not familiar with how it works, these early stage projects will say, hey, look, we're looking for X amount of investment. Based on that investment, you'll get Y amount of our token allocation, all right? So, you'll get a certain percentage of the total token amount or, total supply. You'll get a certain amount of that. And that may not come for some time in the future, or it may be that they're ready to launch at that time, and then you kind of get it. So whenever they're ready to do that token generation event, meaning they're launching their token, anyone who invested them prior to that will get their piece of that token supply. All right. And so, okay, so now they invest in a certain project. Now that project gives them a piece of the pie, okay, of coins that have not been mined yet. And then from the investment that they gave them, so let's say they gave $15 million, just throwing it out there. Make it easier. Let's say $5 million, okay? Smaller amount, maybe more believable. Project X comes and says, hey, we've got this kind of project here. It looks great. We're going to have our own token, based on your investment of $5 million, we'll give you 10%. These are just made up numbers. We're going to give you 10% of our supply when we generate these tokens. Research says, okay, here's our 5 million. That 5 million that we give you for those coins that will come at some point in time, we want you to put that 5 million and all the money that you've collected onto FTX, the exchange. Project says, okay, no problem. We'll put that money on there. And what does FTX do? FTX then takes the money that Alameda Research invested, so that 5 million, and returns it back to Alameda Research. So essentially, they've gotten those pre-mined tokens for free, and then Alameda Research goes on to invest the same, from the same pool of money, and goes and invests in certain other projects. So the system just continues to repeat. So at the same time, they're getting their capital back, but they're also getting these pre-mined tokens back, and it just continues on and on and on. So this is how these two were working together. So that's number one. Number two here, all right? And I'm going to minimize myself so you guys can see it better. We're going to go through this. Is that meanwhile, at a meeting with Alameda employees on Wednesday, Miss Ellison explained what had caused the collapse. According to a person familiar with the matter, her voice shaking, she apologized, saying she had let the group down. And just so you know, Miss Caroline Ellison is the CEO, or was the CEO of Alameda Research. She apologized, she let the group down. Over recent months, she said Alameda had taken out loans and used the money to make venture capital investments among other expenditures. Okay, so they took out a loan and then they used that money to make investments. Okay, around the time the crypto market crashed this spring, Miss Ellison explained lenders moved to recall those loans. But the funds that Alameda had spent were no longer easily available. So the company used FTX customer funds to make the payments. Okay, so let's talk about this again. Real simple terms. Alameda Research takes out a loan, right? Market is hot. They're like, no problem. We're going to cover this. Easy peasy, right? They take out a loan. They use that loan to then go and invest in other projects. Cool. No problem. But here's what happens. The market turned. And as things crumbled, they were no longer able to cover the loans with any gains that they made in any of these projects. There were no gains to be had. And so what did they do? Is that they actually used customer funds that were deposited onto their platform. They used those to actually pay back their loans. So we've got clients, X amount of clients. They've deposited a certain amount, and we'll just take a piece of that and just pay off our loans. Pretty crazy right there that they were doing that. Okay, so now you're combining, not only are they investing in projects and then getting that money back through FTX, But now FTX, Alameda Research here, is paying back loans from the funds that were from the FTX customer funds as well. Okay, this is unbelievable, and this is how the two were coordinating this together. So FTX essentially was like a home base for Alameda Research to take money from and use the money to do all kinds of things. And then when they couldn't pay things back, FTX would come in and save them by using the customer deposits on their platform. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 here. FTX lost up to $2 billion in user funds. Lost them. Okay, $10 billion was sent to Alameda. So here's what we're talking about: this relationship between FTX. Let's make this a little bit bigger. This relationship between FTX and Alameda was so linked together. The scam was run together by both parties and executed to the T. All right. So they lost, out of all the things that they were doing, taking loans, repaying them with customers' funds, the customer is always the one that loses out. And so they lost up to $2 billion in their customer user base funds. And in total, they sent $10 billion to Alameda to cover those loans, to do whatever that they had to do in terms of expenditure as well. Right? So that's number 3. Number 4, this one is outright crazy. Crazy. Okay? So what had happened when everything was going crazy now in FTX and everyone's kind of seeing it's falling apart, they paused withdrawals. Okay? So the users could not take their money off the platform or their assets off the platform if it wasn't fiat. And so what does FTX do is that they actually created a fake document saying that it was from the Bahama regulator that FTX was able to withdraw funds. So not the users, but FTX themselves were able to withdraw funds. So imagine this scenario, right? Imagine this scenario. Everything is frozen on the platform. So from you depositing money, now you cannot take your money back. Okay, so that's the customer end of it. The business side end of it, it's not frozen. They can withdraw whatever funds they want. And we already know, as I mentioned previously, that they were taking user funds and moving them elsewhere. So now they're just sucking dry the platform, which are the user funds, because the users can't withdraw anything. And FTX is using them however they like, or whoever is withdrawing it on behalf of FTX. Okay. But what they did was they created a fake document saying that, look, the Bahama regulator said that we can withdraw this money. And so we're only doing things based on what the regulators have said. Insane. It was absolutely false. False. Okay. So, and you can see it here. And FTX is based in Bahamas. So this is what they said. Per our Bahamian headquarters regulation and regulators, we have begun to facilitate withdrawals of Bahamian funds. As such, you may have seen some withdrawals processed by FTX recently as we complied with the regulator. That's insane that is that fake. All right. So that's number 4. Number 5 I want to cover here is the fact that these guys were responsible for the Luna crash, the Luna USDT debacle that cascaded into other things such as Three Arrows Capital going belly up. FTX and bankman-fried, Alameda, all these guys, what they do is they were liquidation hunting, they call it. So they were finding liquidation points for, Three Arrows Capital and other firms, and they were tanking the market so that liquidation price would hit, and that those firms would have to just sell out, or at least not sell out, but they would have to repay whatever leverage they were on. And because the market was bad, they couldn't do that. So these guys were purposely tanking the market so that these guys couldn't make what they had to make in terms of to keep their assets. And so everybody just went boom, 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 dominoes, right? Three Arrow Capital's gone. So that's number 5, what these guys are doing. Number 6, and probably one of the most sickening things here from a crypto standpoint, a true Web3 blockchain crypto individual who wants to see the space grow and give back power to the people. Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX were working hand in hand with Gary Gensler. And if you don't know who he is, he's the head of the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States. And with all that is happening in terms of the SEC trying to crack down on all kinds of things, but not really giving any clarity, and just going after things just to create a stir and create a bad reputation on the crypto space, and not speaking favorably at all. So what was happening is that Gensler and Sam were working together to find loopholes that would allow FTX to become a monopoly and dominate the entire space. Meanwhile, the regulations or policies that they came up with would crush everybody else in the crypto space. Yeah. So not exactly a decentralized process, right? We're talking about as centralized as you can, a lot of greedy hands in the pot, and things just blown up. So look, those are the 6 things I wanted to talk about. I hope this is the last time I make a video about these guys. I'm sure there'll be more involved, but look, there's so much positive things that are happening, great projects that are building in this time, that everyone's so enamored with this story, myself included, right? With the depths of this greed and really premeditated scam that's just been going on under the covers in front of, you know, sophisticated investors, really smart individuals, all under their noses. This has been happening from the get-go. But I want to focus more on the positive things going forward. There will be a silver lining out of this. It does not make anybody feel better who's lost money. It's not meant to. There's nothing I could say to make them feel better. But in terms of crypto space, this is going to provide a great boost in terms of how we look at what we invest in. You look at the exchanges right now, they're doing something called proof of reserves. So they're showing their assets. It's not the greatest right now, but it's one step further. There was something mentioned today about proof of insolvency, which I really like the idea of. So not only are you getting the assets and liabilities, but you're looking at the business itself, the fundamentals. Do they have the licenses? You know, all the operations, all of that is transparent. So interesting to see going forward. But this is a real kick in the teeth. And, you know, we'll be up stronger and things will get buttoned up as we move forward. And I look forward to seeing that day.